Hey guys, welcome back to the second video in the 3D Racer video tutorial series. Now, last time we looked at terrain, we looked at adding trees and things like that. So I've done a little bit of work on mine. This side of the track I didn't do a whole lot yet. And I just put some trees in on this side of the track. I don't think it's evenly spaced. It's got some issues, but overall, I'm going to be totally fine with it for the intents of all intents and purposes regarding this video. I have a little corner here with some high-rise rocky pillars and then this open space on this side. So today we're going to be adding the car and the camera, and it might be a shorter video. We're going to do a pretty simple camera script, so our first little bit of scripting for this game. And then after that, we'll be working with user interfaces to start keeping up with laps and lap times and all that. But let's just start with getting the car in the game. In the asset package that I gave you, it included a folder called Standard Assets, and this is something that Unity put out a long time ago. It's a little deprecated; it's not supported anymore. But I've done some fixes, and it should work in your game. So when you double-click on Standard Assets, there's a folder called Vehicles, Car, Prefabs. And there are two cars. We will be using both of these, but right now we're starting with just car. And it'd be nice for you to go ahead and designate a place that you think should be your starting area for your car. So I'm going to drag this out. I'm going to put mine right down there. I think this looks like a good place. And it's over here in my hierarchy. And I'm going to double click on it to zoom in. So yeah, the brush sizes worked. I think this looks pretty good for a width of track. And so this car is a prefab that includes a bunch of different particles and the car model and all these colliders. It already comes with everything you need. To start off, it already will drive from the very get-go. I'm going to go ahead and orient it. Let's say I'm going to go this direction for my track, heading straight towards the trees. So selecting my car, I'm going to rotate this, get it where I want it to be. That looks pretty good. So we have a camera already in our scene. I'm going to go ahead and Command S to save your main camera. And I'm going to make this main camera a child of the car object right now. So where's my camera? Just out of curiosity. Yeah, mine's all the way out here, as you can see in the preview window. So I'm going to reset the transform now to kind of get it right underneath my car. Now I'm double click on it to go find it. Yeah, it's right in the middle of the car, which is not exactly what I want. So the position I went with, I want the X, the left and right, to be centered. So I'm going to get that at 0. I want it to be a little bit higher, so I'm going to set the Y to 3. I want to move it back from the car. So -7, so I can kind of see. And if I look at my game view, I can get a better sense. And I like the way this looks. You might want to move it back a little bit more. You're welcome to do so. -9. How's that look? That's sort of that wider view. I like -7. I'll keep that for myself. Now, we've done this before where we've looked at parenting a camera to an object. And when we did create with code, we did an airplane game or a car game where it was going straight forward, and we know there's going to be an issue with this. So I'm going to press play, and you'll instantly be able to tell what that is. Remember, controls are WSD does work. So the camera is following, but you'll notice that the camera inherits its rotation from the car. Let's go forward. Let's see if I can get to that rocky section. Or just hit this right here like that. Yeah, see, that's really way too rocky. This is not what we want. We want a camera that doesn't rock with the car. So we're going to have to make a script to take care of that. Now that we've got the position we want, though, I can go ahead and unparent that camera. So I'm going to take it off of the car, put it back over here in the hierarchy. And instead, we're going to create an object that is attached to the player that the camera will follow its position but not inherit the rotation. So clicking on the car, control right click, 3D object, cube. And I'm going to move it up just a little bit. Actually, I want to change the name of it. Call it CameraFollow. CameraFollow is the name of this object, so I know what it is. And I'm going to move it up some so I can see it. Like, I'll just put it on top of the car so we can get a sense of what's going on here. Then, back in Assets, I need to create a folder for scripts. So new folder, scripts, and I'll double click on it, and I'm going to create a new C# script. And this C# script, I'm going to call it stable camera. Press return, and let's open up Visual Studio for the first time in this project. So the part that we're going to inherit from, so we double click on it. Sometimes you have to click. There it is. The thing you have to inherit from this CameraFollow, the only components that it has are, transform, its mesh renderer, box collider, all that stuff. But from here, we just want to inherit that position. So let's think through this really quick. What are the variables that we're going to need? So I'm going to go to line 6, press return. Well, first we want to know where the player's car is. So we need to get a game object, public game object. We'll call it player car. And then we're going to need to know those different parts of his position. So public, so those 3 aspects of it. And since these are not going to be just whole numbers or integers, they're going to be floats. We're going to click public float, and we'll call it the car of X, public float, car of Y, and then finally public float, car of Z, or Z, as the British like to say. And we don't really need the start method right now. We're just going to delete that part. What we do need, let me zoom in a little bit, maybe it might be easier to see. What we do need is in the update, we want this to happen every frame that our camera is following. We're going to say that the car of X is equal to, we're going to set this variable. Basically, we're going to say, what is X? And X is equal to the player car dot transform, transform dot Euler Angles, and I'll tell you about that in just a second, dot X. I want to point out, remember, we're still doing something called camel case. I'd never called it that last year, but camel case is the lowercase, uppercase way that we've done typing. Still follow that policy of writing your variables using camel case. So let's talk about Euler Angles really quick. Hey, so I wanted to pause here and kind of quickly explain what a Euler angle is. I think you understand it. You will understand it easily once I show you a little bit of information. So in that script we were writing earlier, we were looking at Euler angles here, and we're going to add this other section here in just a second. And Euler angles are what you think of when you think of angles. It's basically an x, y, z coordinate, the fixed 3D object in the world. That's easy to understand. When we move something or rotate something, we look at its Euler angles. So it's the rotation of a 3D object. We take its x, y, z. Now the reason why that doesn't suffice for everything we do in game design is when you rotate an object more than 90 degrees, let's say on its x position, that axis then becomes the y. right? Goes from being all the way over here, and it gets up into the Y position. And once that happens twice on two angles in game design, it leads to something called a gimbal lock, where that object can no longer rotate because all the axes are now one spot. So there is something called quaternions, which is another way to think about rotation, but they're not quite as easy to understand. So I just wanted to point out that XYZ rotation in space, we use Euler angles. That's what you see on any of these objects that you're going to find here. That rotation, we call those Euler angles anytime we want to access those in code. Quaternions is another way of understanding them that we will talk about later. So we want to do the same thing for our Y and our Z. We need to know what the rotation is at any given point. So we're just going to type it out, .transform, I need to put a period here, huh? And I could just copy and paste that, but let's just do that. Z and Z. There you go. Save that. So every frame is going to know what that is. So since the follow player object that's attached here, the camera follow object, is a child of the player, it's going to rotate too. But we want it to go the opposite direction. Oh, this is supposed to be a lowercase c. So let's tell this object, whenever we turn to the left, we want the object to turn to the right so that it makes up for that difference there. Transform Euler Angles equals a new, remember, the shorthand for XYZ is vector 3, which is the car of X minus car of X car Y, and then car Z minus car Z. All right, let's try to explain this here so it makes sense to you. So whenever in the update, we want the camera follow object to always be facing forward. So whatever the rotation is from our player's car, we're going to subtract it from how much we just rotated. So if the car moves 15 on the X, like rotates on the X axis, 15, then we want the box to go the opposite or minus that amount. And we're doing the same thing on our Z axis. But we're not doing it on our Y because we shouldn't be doing any kind of rotations on the Y that makes any real issue here. So I'm going to save this. And maybe it'll make more sense when we attach it to our object. Okay, I'm going to add that script onto our camera follow object. So I can just click there. I'll just drag it in. You guys know how to do this part. All right, we need to, of course, complete everything we need in the inspector. So we need to know what the player's car is. Here. And these are just public numbers so that we can see. So if I save it, I will press play. It doesn't look like it's working right now, because when we press play, see the cube is rotating. It looks like it's rotating with the car totally. But now let's go ahead and add the camera to the cube. So I'm going to take the main camera and put it onto the camera follow object. And let's press play. And now you'll notice that the camera is still always following us. We'll see what happens if we hit an incline or some type. See, that camera looks a lot better because now you can see that the cube is staying in a stationary position. Let's try it one more time. There you go. So that's what we were looking for the camera to do. So basically we formed a stable camera by attaching the camera to a box object that is using the inverse of the rotation of our car. So whenever our car rotates, the cube is automatically going the opposite way to do that. And the last step we need to do is just on our CameraFollow object. I'm going to turn off the collider because we don't need a collider on that. And we don't need the mesh renderer, so we don't need to be able to see that at any point. Before I get off of this cameras thing, I want to go ahead and add something. I was going to wait till another video to take care of it, but I think I want to go ahead and do it now, which is going to be switching camera angles. So I'm going to go find my car here. So sorry, I originally was going to add this to the video, and I've decided at the last minute to go ahead and add that to this. So basically, when we're switching between different cameras, you're gonna use a script to do that. So we're gonna place 3 cameras in the scene and then move between them. But first, let's go ahead and assign a button to do that. So at the very top, you have edit. I know you can't see that on your screen, but you know the edit option. We're gonna go to project settings and then input manager. Under axes, you currently have 18 axes. So these are all the different things that you can do. Horizontal, vertical. And we've done this before, like input get button down, where we've said the name of the button like a jump button. And then we've also done get key down. So that's like the specific button, like OG, which is now my jump button. Right now we're going to need to add one more axis because we're going to make a specific button, or a specific button to be our change camera view. So I'm going to change this from 18 to 19 and press enter. And now you'll see at the very bottom I have a new cancel option because it just duplicates the bottom one. So I'm going to click on that one, scroll down, and I'm going to change the name of this one to view mode. And the positive button, I don't want to use the escape key. I'm going to use V as the key. Once you're done, you don't press enter or anything. You just click out of this. And that should take that key. So now we have a new key to control this. So inside of your scripts, let's create a new C# script. And we're going to call this one, what was the name I wanted to go? Oh yeah, camera change. Press return. And I'm going to open that up inside of Visual Studios. So I don't really need the start boilerplate here. I'm going to get rid of that. And we need to come up with some variables. Well, we do know we're going to have 3 different cameras. We're going to have 3 views. So we need to have a variable for each one of those. So those are going to be a public. Those are game objects. I'll call the first one main cam. So that's the one we currently have. Then the next one is going to be one of those ones that are like a wide out view. So if, like further in the back. So I'm just going to call it my far cam. And then the other one is going to be the first person view, like you're in the driver's seat. So let's do public game object, and I'll just call it first person cam. Remember, I'm using camel case here. The last thing I need is a number, because we're going to basically associate a number with each camera. So main camera might be number 1, far camera will be number 2, first person camera is 3. So whenever we press the button, it'll change this number and then associate the camera with that number. Since we're using whole number, we're going to use an int, and I'm just going to call that cam mode. So we're going to do all this in the update because we always want it to check for this. Before I get any further, I'm going to save this script, go back into Unity, give it a second to compile. And I think, if I recall, the camera is on the car under the CameraFollow object. Right here is main camera. I'm going to duplicate this one twice with Command D and then Command D. I'm going to take the first duplicate and I will call it far cam. And I will call this one first person cam. That way the names are going to be associated with it. Now right now they're all in the same space. But I'm going to take my far cam I'm going to move it back some, and I can look at it here in the window. Actually, I'm going to move my game window over here just so I can kind of get a better sense of what's going on. I'm going to move it further back. Oh, you know what? It's still using the main camera set, so I won't be able to see it. I'll just have to use the far cam view window there, and I will pick it up. I want to go up a little bit higher. I want to be able to see the back of the car, and I might rotate just a little bit. You don't have to do, I mean, you kind of need to find that setting that works for you, but I'm feeling like that looks better for my far cam. My first person cam, I might just adjust this back. I'm going to move it forward and down. I'm going to put that Y back at 0. Actually, it needs to be down more because it's attached to that object. We would just right in front. Maybe pick it up some. Let's zoom in, see what we have here. Use my Q to pan, W to get back onto this. Yeah, I'm going to pick it up some, so we're not so close to the ground. Okay, so I like the positioning on that. I'm going to go ahead and save that with Command S. Okay, so now that we have them, we're going to go back and we need to actually go and disable these two. So I'm going to shift click, I have both of them selected, and I'm going to disable them. So they're, not on right now, because we're going to turn them on and off. So back in Visual Studio, in our update, the first thing I want to do is go ahead and just come up with a method to hold this. It's going to be a coroutine because we're going to have the update to check to see the number that we're on and then switch the camera. So, let's just go ahead and make the button work. So if input dot get button, and we're going to say get button down, so not key because we're not, and the name as a string, which we called view mode. So we gave it a name in our axes, and then we're calling that specific button here. We could say, get key down and then G, but it's nice to have these labeled in here. All right, let's open up some curly brackets. We're going to create a condition. If cam mode equals 2, and I'll explain that in a second, and cam mode needs to be set to 0. So what we're going to check and see is when we push the button, we should have 3 options. The first camera is going to be 0, the second one is 1, and the third one is 2. If it's ever 2, then it'll cycle back down to 0. So this is to make sure that the 0, 1, and 2, 2's are their option. And if we press the button when we're on 2, then it'll go back to 0. So we never can go to a third one. Else, this is the part that will actually move it up. It's just basically cam mode. And if I want to add 1 to it every time, it's plus equals 1. There you go. That's pretty straightforward. If I ever push this button, add 1, as long as it's not equal to 2. If we go from 2, try to go to 3, then I'll go to 0. Now we're going to make a coroutine outside of this update. We'll have to put it in a second. So it's an IE numerator, and we're going to call it mode change. That's just the name. Open, close brackets or parentheses, and then let's open that up. Right now you're going to get an error because we haven't done a return yet. But we're going to do it right now. We're going to say yield new return. Oh wait, I always do that backwards. I don't know why I've done that for years. Return new wait for seconds. Open that up, and we're going to do 0.01f. So let me tell you what's happening here. You might remember in that first game we did in Video Game Design 1, where the camera was following the truck and it was very jolting. It was kind of like staggering as we did it. That was because we had to move it to fixed update because we want to use update for physics and fixed update after the fact, at the end of the update. This is our way of doing that, is after we push the button, give it a second to switch over to give the cameras a chance to kind of like catch up, to make sure they're in the right spot. All right, and now we're going to create basically a series of cases, or little conditions. So if, for each one of these numbers, we're going to create a condition. If cam mode equals 0, so if it equals 0, then we want to make sure that the main cam, so we always come up with the first thing we want, is .set active is true. And it would be coming out of camera 3, which was our first person camera. That's the one that would be our third. We want that one to be set active false. And the reason why we're turning on the camera first and then turn the other one off is so we don't want a gap between the two. If we turn off the first person camera first and then the main cam, we might get like a little split second of not being able to see. So I bet you can go ahead and figure out the other ones yourself. If cam mode equals 1, then we want to turn off the first cam. Well, we turn on the second camera, which was our far cam. Set active. True. And we want to turn our main cam off like this. Finally, our last case, our last condition here, cam mod equals 2, then we turn our first person, that's the third camera, on, and then let's turn our, is it main cam, first cam, far cam off this way. Pretty straightforward. Now we just need to call this coroutine. So we're going to put it right here. If that button is pushed right here, we're going to start our coroutine, open up some brackets or parentheses, and we're going to call the name of the method, the coroutine we want, which includes its own set of parentheses, and then that. And yeah, that's it. That's how you do a camera switching script. It's pretty straightforward. Let's save that script. Let's go back into Unity, let it compile. And we're going to go ahead and create an object to hold that information, though. We're going to go over to the hierarchy, create empty. Going to call this game object camera manager. Oops, not manager. Manager. And add that camera change script onto it. Assign in the inspector your different cameras, so main cam, far cam, first person cam, and then camera mode is just, I set it public so we can see it while we're playing. But what we should see, if I save, is our camera switching between when I press the V key on the keyboard. Boom, boom, boom. There you go. And there's no real gap. It's a very small gap in time. I think it looks pretty good. Okay, this is the last part of the camera's video for now. And then we'll pick up with our enemy car. No, I lied. We're going to be doing user interface in the next video.